Reality is not subjective. The 6 versus 9 meme. Recently I was reminded about this meme by somebody who I was interacting with in text after debating with them about them being wrong. They retreated into this. Well, you're right and I'm right and everybody is right, essentially. Your perspective is fine for you and I have my perspective and that's fine for me. Reality is true for you and it's true for me. It's all about the enlightenment level or, all this nonsense. It's like looking at the number 6 and the number 9, but it's just all about your point of perception. No to all that nonsense. It's all about the perspective that one has. People will say, you're right if you look at it this way, but I'm right if I look at it this way. Thus, we're both right in our own way. Just because one thing is ambiguous doesn't mean that everything in reality is also ambiguous. It might be the case that there are certain things that don't have one clear answer, but that doesn't mean there isn't a clear answer in other cases. Extrapolating this meme out into all of reality is just silly. Of course, corrections have been attempted for this meme, and those corrections themselves could also be further corrected. But there is a point trying to be made. There isn't enough information here to know what this is. Is it the number 6? Is it the number 9? Or is it something that's unknowable? It could be the letter G for all we know. There's just not enough context. Could also be the letter W, but it just had wet paint, so it drooped over in on itself. Or maybe it's none of those things. Reality is not like this, as a whole. There might be times when some things are ambiguous. There might be times that certain things look different ways depending on your perspective, but there is an actual truth to reality. So it is true that sometimes some things are ambiguous, but that doesn't mean that everything is ambiguous. It doesn't mean that your point of view is just as valid as my point of view. More often than not, there is only what the truth actually is, and we both have our idea of what that truth might be. How we get to the truth is called epistemology, and it is that we must have a coherent method of. If we do not use a coherent epistemology, then we're not going to get to a coherent conclusion. In this particular example, using the methodology of enlightenment is not a coherent way to arrive at any conclusion, as anyone can claim a higher level of enlightenment than anyone else. My enlightenment level is greater than Think About It's enlightenment level, therefore actually I'm right. How would he ever know? That's the problem. It's not a methodology at all, because we can't resolve it using any sort of coherent formula. We can't deduce whose enlightenment is in fact greater. So we don't need that idea at all. Epistemology, the theory of knowledge, especially with regards to its method, validity, and scope. Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from opinion. It is the way to get to the closest thing approximating truth that we can get to, if indeed we can get to the truth at all. The methodology must be something that has been shown to be effective in the past. Here's 2 example methodologies that wouldn't help you get to the conclusion. Praying to find $1. Keep praying every day, eventually find $1, and then assume that the prayer was answered. But if we did the opposite and just did not pray to find a dollar, but we looked for a dollar, eventually finding a dollar, then we could also conclude that the prayer is not needed. But neither of these are sufficient methodology to get to the conclusion of whether prayer is or is not needed to find a dollar. Well, we can find a dollar when we don't pray for it, but does praying increase the likelihood of finding a dollar? The question itself must be examined, as well as the methodology. So then you need to reformulate the question. Perhaps the question you want to try to answer is, can prayer help you find a dollar more often than not praying to find a dollar help you to find the dollar? Conducting an experiment would seem to be in order, although it would just be a sample size of 1. Still, it might give you some indication. But of course you have to take in many factors. Your awareness that you're looking for a dollar might be increasing your chance of finding a dollar. So you need to go a significant amount of time praying that you'll find a dollar, and a significant amount of time not praying but being aware of looking for a dollar and keeping track of which one is more effective to find a dollar. But is that enough on its own? If you find a dollar during the not prayer time, then are you free to conclude that not prayer works more than prayer does? No. The methodology that's been proven to work, controlled testing, repeated testing, and having a large sample size, is typically outside of the reach of any individual, other than a research scientist, perhaps, or somebody with enough money to fund research scientists. If you indeed wanted to fund a project to find out whether or not prayer was effective in getting people to find dollars more than not praying would be effective to finding $1. So the methodology might be beyond your personal reach. So what does that mean? That means for many problems and issues and questions in life, sometimes we have to admit that we simply don't know, and that on my own, I can't get to the answer of this particular problem. It's just too big for me. But how and when do I decide that the thing is too big for me to answer on my own? That, too, is also answered by the epistemology that I am attempting to utilize. It is not easy, in every case, to determine what the truth is. But we shouldn't just throw our hands up and give up and say, well, everybody's right. Because then nobody would actually be right. Or, well, not everybody can be right in the same way at the same time. At any rate, it would lead to chaos, confusion, and paradox. Also, it wouldn't actually be true that everybody is right. It's just you giving up. One topic that comes up frequently among the theist and non-theist debate is morals. Are they objective or subjective? And somehow this ties into God's existence, although I've never been quite clear on how the two are supposedly related, even though they've presented various arguments that attempt to show that they are linked. The association causation just fails to materialize there. What adding God does simply seems to complicate the matter further. It's moral. It's objectively moral because God said so. Great. Which God? Well, the God I think is real. Well, what about this guy? He thinks a different God's real. Well, he's wrong because my God says so. Well, we're right back to square one, where we're just debating about whose moral is right or wrong. Adding God made the problem more complicated. Let's make it simpler. So, maybe it's neither. Maybe it's both. Maybe it just depends on how you look at it. Or maybe there is a truth and we're asking the wrong question. Is this the number 6 or the number 9? Or is it the letter G? Or is it, I don't know, something else completely different? It's a racetrack that's unfinished. Well, no, it's actually a donut with an extra bit of goo added on. Or maybe it's just an unresolvable conundrum that somebody made because it was interesting to make it. What is the sound of nothing? That's an incoherent question, but it's also a conundrum and a paradox. The sound of nothing. Does nothing have a sound? Listen, I hear nothing. Exactly. But does that sound like anything? No. Well, then what am I listening to? Or listening for if I'm listening to the fact that it's really quiet? It's too quiet. Something's about to happen. Uh-oh. Run! Run! Don't open that door, you stupid idiots! Don't! No, no. Okay, you're all dead. You went down the wrong way. You split up. You're all screwed. And so, in conclusion, we do indeed have our own viewpoints, but we must use a coherent methodology to get to whatever the truth might be, if indeed we can get to the truth of the matter at all. Using a system that's been well established to do so is our only hope to getting to the truth. Let's not meme reality, because it is real and not subjective. All we can do is use the best methodology